Peter?
Let me see if my
And then we have
video stop. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Our guest of honor, Richard.
Oh, I can't hear you. I must have to turn the preferences. Audio, test mic, test speaker. There we go. That's why. Oh, it's not paired. Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. Here we go. All right. Now I can hear you. Amen.
Excellent. Excellent. How are you, Richard?
Oh, good. How was your holiday, gentlemen?
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, very, very nice.
Very
I
beautiful.
can't complain.
Moscow's very beautiful this time of year. It's all dressed up with a lot of snow, but it's still very pretty.
You're lucky though to have the snow, Peter. You're lucky. You know,
No,
miss it.
don't you ever say that to someone living in Moscow. Okay. You don't say that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, but my kids were like hoping against hope so hard, you know, and it didn't happen. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I never thought snow was a lot of fun. You know, getting thrown, playing snowball with other kids. It was never much fun. You know, somebody throws a snowball at you, you got all this cold water pouring down your neck. I don't know. I never saw the fun of it.
I think were you bullied, George?
Well, I guess
It sounds like it.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, not a huge amount, but yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
it's character building, I say. Okay,
yeah, I think so too.
This whole snowflake thing really irritates. Right. Speaking of snow,
okay. Exactly. That's right.
That's
all right,
funny, guys.
We ready to start?
Yeah. Give me. Yeah. I mean, I just want to do this. All right, I'm ready. I'm a pariah.
All right, let's then start. Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me, of course, is my regular partner, co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And today we are once again fortunate to have with us this outstanding American pollster, Richard Baris, who's a frequent, in fact, a regular guest of ours. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. And I'll just kick off with a couple of ideas. Since we last spoke, Richard, we've had the Build Back Better bill postponed into the indefinite future. We have the Democrats now threatening that they're going to pass, enhancing democracy legislation. Biden continues unraveling in the polls. And in the meantime, on the other side, we've had a couple of sort of rather bland, innocuous interviews by Donald Trump. In one case, he was interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, in which he completely fluffed the question about Fauci, couldn't even bring himself to say anything negative about James Comey and Christopher Wray. And then he was interviewed by Candace Owens, and then he completely fluffed the question about Julian Assange. So, you know, we'll have to start wondering. I mean, Trump himself is getting on in years. By 2024, he'll be, close enough to Biden's age as he was in 2020. And one wonders whether, with this new, kinder, gentler Trump, is going to appeal to the base, the Republican base. They might actually find it more attractive to have a non-kind, non-gentle DeSantis, who's at least younger and doesn't seem to be particularly interested in being nice and friendly to people. Anyway, a lot of notions there to throw out. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, I think, let's start at the beginning, right? The Build Back Better bill. Joe Manchin essentially drove a stake through that. He came out and, if you oppose these people at all, like Andrea Mitchell after his speech, Joe Biden's speech, nothing he said in that speech was true. When he gave the vaccination speech right before that bill was killed. And then Joe Manchin's another great example. You say anything and you go off the reservation and you get viciously attacked. It doesn't matter if you're a so-called moderate like Joe Manchin or you're one of the most left-wing figures in American media like Andrea Mitchell. And I think that they're really missing the point here. Build Back Better and they're dropping the polls are not hurting, because people they think they have a communication problem, guys, which is something that this is a real detachment. They're really out of touch. They think that they just haven't been effective in communicating what they've done, how much they could help people's lives, these policies. That's not it. We've been polling this for a long time. They know the more they found out about Build Back Better, the more they disliked it. They're more concerned about inflation, and people aren't dumb. They're just not as dumb as politicians think they are. So they say, well, if we would just spend this much more money, it will help inflation, Joe Biden says, because, the cost of childcare is going to go down and Build Back Better. And that's part of inflation. No, it's not. I mean, this is good. What are you talking about, Joe? And he goes on to talk about used automobiles being the main driver of inflation, when if you look at CPI, the primary categories are energy and groceries. So I don't know where their minds are, but they think they have that issue, and they're going to continue. This is not going to get better for them until they come out of their alternative reality. You have the transportation secretary, in response to Andrea Mitchell, going on Twitter after that speech and saying the shelves are stocked, and that's because Joe Biden stepped it up. Everybody is going Christmas shopping and finding the shelves are bare. Everyone, I'm Italian. We celebrate Christmas Eve. It's a big deal. My family, from north to south to east to west, some of them just didn't buy certain items this year because they were ridiculously expensive when they did find them, and I'm talking about fish, we're the Feast of the Seven Fishes on Christmas Eve. And many of them just, decided to forego some of the dishes this year because they're not paying $30 a pound for lobster. I mean, it's just crazy, if they can find what they're looking for. And the same was true of toys and other gifts that you were trying to buy your loved ones. One of the most popular items, I brought this up last week on the show, Manscaped, right? Great marketing, these people. They ran out of the bundles and people couldn't get those bundles until January 10th. Amazon, if you shopped on Amazon, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't just physical shelves, even in the digital space, even in, e-commerce online. The shelves, the so-called e-shelves, were bare. So they're just talking in an alternate reality, and people are, what are you going to do? Right. Peter, we talked about this before. Are you going to believe them, or are you going to believe your lying eyes? Right. And what you see, what the gas pump says, and nothing Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg says is going to change that because they're just, they're trying to will it into existence. And then with Donald Trump, on that, George, I don't know if they're trying to tell him, look, you have a big lead over Joe Biden right now. Yep. And frankly, most of the other candidates, we've polled Kamala Harris. Democrats don't have a bench. They don't have a bench. Who are they going to put up against Donald Trump in 2024? Joe Biden's not running. And if he is, it's the greatest gift to Donald Trump you could ever hand him. He's got, I wonder if he has advisors around him telling him, stay away from this, stay away from that. You have a big lead, just ride it out. Mr. President, I just want to tell you something. That's what they told Mitt Romney after the first debate. Okay. That is what they told Mitt Romney after the first debate when the Pew poll came out. 4 points plus Romney, Romney plus 4, Gallup, Romney plus 2 to 4, whatever it was. That is a load of crap. Be authentic. And yes, sometimes, I have my own criticisms of the former president. Don't rock the boat unnecessarily, but be who you are. Yeah. Anthony Fauci was your biggest mistake. You better admit to voters that listening to Anthony Fauci was your biggest mistake. We had a kind of a funny poll, guys, that we did on locals where I bought these L's from Hobby Lobby. And I thought they were the most magical things in the world. And my wife is like, they're creepy. So we do this kind of like funny poll and I throw it on Twitter and I'm like, what do you think? Christmas elves, magical or creepy? Creepy won 80-12. Do you know why? I didn't notice it when I bought them. They looked like Anthony Fauci. And and they did once all of the respondents started to point it out to me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is textbook association bias. I can't believe I didn't see this before. Those poor elves went down in flames because they looked like Anthony Fauci. I mean, that's it. So Donald Trump is going to have to, if he really wants to make a serious run, he's going to have to be authentic, but don't rock the boat. And then also, you have to admit your mistakes. Yep. Your personnel decisions were abysmal. Yep. Who you listened to during the pandemic. You know what? Why that hurt him so much? Because in 2016, he ran as the anti-expert guy. The experts got us into Iraq. The experts destroyed the economy. The experts did this. The hell with the experts. And people were like, yeah, you can't now decide, Anthony Fauci gave the best advice he possibly could. No, double the number of Americans are dead than Anthony Fauci told you we're going to die if we didn't implement strong mitigation policies. Better start admitting that. Yep. You have to admit it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're covering so much so quickly. As far as, the messaging problem, their messaging problem. No. It's the messenger is their biggest problem. Okay, first of all. The messenger didn't break a sweat for his own bill. I mean, what did he do for it? He hardly did anything. Okay, I mean, if you don't want to own it, why should anyone else own it? Number 2, the more people learned about it, the more they didn't understand it more than anything else. It's a massive piece of legislation. And right now, people are not looking for massive change. They are. They're looking for a massive change. The population is not interested in a revolution, a tearing down everything and rebuilding with what? You make a lot of promises all the time. We've heard your promises before. Let's take it step by step here. I mean, on every single metric, okay, this is not a change time. This is a get a grips time. That's what this is all about. And here are these experts, the professional managerial class, they have created this mess and they want another bite at the apple. Intuitively, people say, no way, no way. Now, on Trump, George and I have already discussed this, and I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's a quandary that Trump has found himself in. George and I discussed, if things are going great, why rock the boat, as you both have said here. Maybe Trump, now I'm just speculating here, maybe he doesn't have the fire in his stomach anymore. Maybe he just wants to remain relevant, okay? That's a possibility as well. But George, as George and I discussed, what was it, 2 or 3 days ago? I mean, he really muffed a whole series of interviews. I mean, he was a kinder, gentler version of himself. Okay, I suppose that's okay, but that's not what made him attractive to people. Okay, right. And I agree. And during the entire course of his 2016 campaign and his presidency, all of us thought some of the things he put on Twitter were cringeworthy, obviously. And I think there's one thing that we all three discuss every time we convene is that Trump had a huge HR problem. Okay. And I think that's the issue that I will take away and be most critical about, because you've got to own those things. Okay. The McMasters and the Boltons and the Faucis. Okay. Because
but that's exactly the point, that he runs in 2015, 2016. I mean, as Richard said, he's running against the experts, but very specifically, he ran against the neocons, the interventionists, the Bushies, the people who've been running the Republican Party for years. And he said, you got us into this mess. And you can't even win elections. I mean, if you could at least deliver elections for us, but all these McCains and Romneys and Bushes, to be frank, were not able to win, elections. Bush kind of won it by, very low hocus pocus. So he had that message. And then what did he do? As soon as he came to power, he appointed the very people that he ran against. I mean, what the hell, like McMaster, and all the rest of them, John Bolton and so on. So he has to address that, just to say, oh, well, I didn't really know anything about Washington. And so when I came there, I just didn't know about it. Well, there were plenty of people around that he could have gone to, consulted, and would have given him, hey, here's a roster of people that you could hire.
George, he could have asked us.
He could have asked us. Exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, honestly, Peter, guys, you should have asked, essentially the alternative media, people and figures that had been giving him the advice he was listening to so tentatively during the campaign. He didn't listen to MSNBC or the panel at Special Report on Fox News. He went to social media and he listened to people like us. Right. And then he pivoted and he would say, or whatever. Maybe he didn't even, he just drove home what people were saying. He listened to the pulse of the public. And then, I mean, you really got to give one specific example. I really have to say this of what George and you were saying. Both of you guys are saying. His first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, after running against the Bushes and running against neocons and running against Bushism 2.0, he goes to Condoleezza Rice to get a suggestion for Rex Tillerson, the head of ExxonMobil. Oh my, come on. This is a guy, he called him and everyone around him stupid. If you're going to invade a country, at least take their oil. Remember, if you're going to invade a Mideast country, at least say, so what does he do? He goes to a woman who invaded a country and asked her, which is the best oil man I could get for this job? Guys, think about it. Okay, this was not good.
We could flip it this though too. George and I have often surmised that John Bolton got the call because it was that one time, George, I think that one time he was on Tucker Carlson. That one time. Right. And what would have happened if he had gotten a call from somebody important, maybe Vladimir Putin or something, and he missed that segment. But the next night, Douglas McGregor was on. Maybe he would have chosen Douglas McGregor.
Incredible. Yeah, that's a great contrast. It really is, because John Bolton's, and I can tell people this, I don't know, I don't see why I can't. John Bolton basically lobbied alternative media they thought were more friendly to Donald Trump. We got calls from people in Bolton's circle trying to convince us that, and we even published a story about these phone calls, trying to convince us that he is no neocon and that he was once upon a time, and that Iraq reformed him, and that he saw the era of his ways. So this was a very coordinated, because they were hoping that people would publish those stories. And then who was pivotal from what I hear? Sean Hannity.
That doesn't. But Hannity,
that's what I heard.
Yeah,
he believed him.
Yeah, Hannity, although a Trump supporter from the beginning, Hannity is a pure neocon. He loves every kind of intervention. It was always very strange.
Syria.
He embraced Donald Trump very early on in 2016, even though the positions that Trump was taking were not at all Hannity's. Trump was talking about improving relations with Russia, whereas Hannity goes on every night that Vladimir Putin's our deadly enemy.
The devil.
And Iraq and Syria, all of which Hannity is in favor of. And so, that's a worse person to listen to. In other cases, Katie McFarland. McFarland, she was appointed as Flynn's number 2, but it wasn't Flynn who appointed her. It was apparently Trump's son, Don Jr., met her at the Fox studio, in the green room. He liked her and said, "Hey, why don't we hire her?" And she was the one who then hired Fiona Hill. And that was a disaster. Fiona Hill, oh yeah, she's all right. She hates Russia, so let's have her. So, this is the way it was done. It really was like a kind of a pickup basketball game. But the
Bill
question is,
Barr was an attempt.
Exactly.
Bill Barr was an attempt, guys, to please after Herbert Walker Bush, after Poppy Bush died, and he was lying in state. George W. Bush, the family went to the White House. They met with Donald Trump. And at that meeting, at that time, they used the death of their father. Think about this for a second. They used the death of Herbert Walker Bush, his father, to make a suggestion to who Donald Trump should appoint for the Department of Justice to be the Attorney General.
Right.
What kind of a person does that? Right. You can make a phone call at any given time. You're a former president, and even despite the bad blood, a current president is going to take the call, or at least schedule a call, of one of his predecessors. Right. You don't use the event, which is tax funded, by the way, taxpayer funded. All these people who lie in state, we're paying for them to lie in state. I mean, what are we, Rome? The hell are we doing? Putting bodies of Caesar on like display for the public to fawn over. This is crazy. I don't like that at all. I don't. I never did.
How many days was John McCain in state? I mean, I don't know how many memorial services. Every day there was a memorial service for John McCain. I mean,
which Donald Trump got them with no problem.
Right.
All for them to use it as a venue to bash Donald Trump at the microphone.
Right.
This is not. I mean, this is. He's got to stop this. Why? Because he wants to be liked. And that is another one, by the way, with KT McFarland. Personally, I like her too. And it's a fascinating story about how the FBI, tried to set her up as well. And she's got a lot of good information people should listen to, but it doesn't mean that, because you personally like somebody, they're in step with your views and will push your agenda. Nikki Haley wanted to run for president. It's the only reason why she pushed Donald Trump's, whatever you want to call it, America First. But had Nikki Haley had her way, she would have lobbed missiles at Kim Jong-un a long time ago. Right. All right. So she would not have met with him at the DMZ and taken a historic step over the DMZ. That never would have happened. She would have pushed it to the brink because that's who she is. But he gave her this. I don't know if anyone saw this or remembers. Go back and look at the send-off that he gave to Nikki Haley in the White House, praising her. Yep. She did a bang-up job. He is a businessman, and he thinks that politics translates into that. If you can only get them to like you, that's not how politicians work. They're backstabbing scumbags.
These people smile at you while they're knifing you. Okay.
That's right.
That's what all of them do. Okay. I mean, it's extraordinary that, that isn't known up front. Okay. So, I mean, maybe to put a bow on this here, I don't know what's going through Trump's head, but I mean, the version that he showed us of those last few interviews really astounded me, so much so that George and I made a special point to talk about it. I'm not going to draw any final conclusions here, but it's not the person that we have
right.
And
to be honest,
you dislike, whatever. Okay.
And to be honest, he also, not to put too fine a point, he seemed old. I mean, it seemed like he was tired. He again trotted out that stupid story about Fauci being such a lousy pitcher. Who the hell cares that he threw out that lousy pitch?
Yep.
And he brings this up time and again. You think, well, hey, you got to come up with a new story. You can't just keep coming up with these old stories.
What does repeating stories tell you?
Yeah, that's exactly. That says it all. I mean, that he's got nothing else to talk about, nothing new to talk about.
Yeah, we saw this at the latter stages of the Reagan administration. You tell the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, he has such a convoluted lying past. He doesn't even repeat the same lies the right way anymore. Okay.
Right.
Peter, so that speech, Peter, that he gave, that vaccination speech, I got to tell you, so we got to talk about that real quick. I mean, that was nothing. He said not a word, Peter, was true. Not a word, not one sentence, coherent sentence, which, by the way, none of it was coherent. He gave the same sentence 3 times, like as if the White House was batting around 3 versions of the speech. That's a good point. Right? Like the speech, right? And they didn't know how to sign off on it. They didn't know which one because people who don't know how a speech is done, Trump was very different. He wrote most of his own. He didn't like speech writers, but most White Houses, the president doesn't write the speech, and then a million eyes look at it. It gets changed like crazy. It looks like he forgot which one they settled on, or maybe they never settled on one. So he just kept giving all three versions, and none of it was true. $4,000 is a bump in the road inflation. This is $4,000, which is what inflation under Joe Biden translates to annually per year. It's another four grand for average families, is a financial catastrophe for most Americans. I mean, to even where is Glenn Kessler at the Washington Post? Where are these fact checkers who come out with these, they were tracking the most ridiculous things they called lies that Donald Trump would say, because he embellished and he would like get the little minutia wrong, but overall what he was saying was generally correct. And, he wouldn't lob like these whoppers. Like auto industry is driving inflation, right? He wouldn't lob these ridiculous untruths that Joe Biden does, and says a thing. PolitiFact, factcheck.org.
But Richard, the media is far harder on Joe Biden than Donald Trump.
Right. But I think he actually did say that if you're vaccinated, you won't get COVID. I mean, Biden actually said that you're vaccinated, you won't get COVID. I mean, it's like, that really is a whopper. Imagine if Trump had said something like that. If you're vaccinated, you can't get COVID. That's right. Anyway, there's a question here, which is just going back to what we were talking about a moment ago. It says, do you fellas think Trump will improve once he's back on social media via his upcoming Truth platform? He needs criticism from his base. This is a question from Drearier Spider. So that's a nice name, Drearier Spider. What do you think? I mean, you think he'll improve once he's back on social media?
That's an interesting topic. Question, because Barnes and I talk quite a bit about this, which is that, like, take the red flag laws after the shooting occurred under Trump's watch, or whatever you want to call it. When that happened, everyone was calling for red flag laws. Like, the least we can do is do a red flag law. And Donald Trump at first started to talk in support of it. He met with different people. The NRA had a conference call with the White House, and basically they told him the dangers of red flag laws and why they do not support them. The social media backlash was so big, Donald Trump did change course, and he realized. I wrote a whole analysis, and it basically was Midwest voters who Donald Trump won in 2016, who had voted Democrat for the last at least 3 presidential elections, that we can profile with the model as Second Amendment supporters. They may not be, there's not percentage wise, it doesn't look big, but in raw total vote, it added up. And why, if you're going to do something like that, what reason are you giving those supporters to cross party lines if you step on the one issue they really care about, right? So we did a whole analysis. He listened to the criticism. He changed course. I don't know. That's a good question, because it's not going to be like Twitter. It'll be more of an echo chamber for Donald Trump, I think. I mean, I'm just being real. Yep. I really do think that it'll be more of an echo chamber, and I'm not sure that's going.
Particularly if it's going to be some form of subscription, okay? Because then people they're going to pay for what they want to hear, okay?
Right.
Okay. So I mean, I'm not putting much stock into that whatsoever. Having said that, one can say that Trump is benefited from being off of social media.
I would argue that too.
Because instead of always the here and now, and he's always with us, always always out there observing, he becomes more of a revered figure at slightly at a distance. There's an upside to that, because what you have in front of you every single day is the sitting president of the United States and Kamala Harris. And so that certainly is generating a very negative reaction. And then a little bit at the distance on the horizon, there's Trump there. It works to his advantage, I would say.
I think that's true, but I think that after the midterms, I mean, if he's going to make a run for it, I mean, I think that he is going to be front and center, and then of course he will come under enormous attack. But you're right, when there aren't these tweets to get the media, the sort of the shiny objects of the media can rush onto, oh, you know what Trump tweeted out today? and then that becomes the news cycle for that evening. So yeah, there isn't that, but that'll have to come back once the campaign starts. But
Well,
there's another.
But
Yeah,
hang on,
there's a-
finish the point here. But it works to his advantage when Joe Biden is in the spotlight every single day.
Yeah.
By definition, it's a net positive for
No,
Trump.
I agree. But there's a question here from Gulsha Qureshi, and he says it's smart to be pro-vax and anti-mandate, which I guess is Trump's position, and his base is mad at him because he isn't anti-vax. DeSantis is scared of the anti-vax base. That weak. Well, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think that it's an intelligent position for Trump to take. Because he's the one who gave us the vax, so he says, hey, I did it. I mean, I threw the resources of the federal government to get the vax, so I'm for the vax, but I'm against the mandate. But I don't get the impression that DeSantis is anti-vax. No, I don't. Do you
No, I think that no, he's not. I mean, I was in Florida and I watched what he did. He went for the vulnerable first, and his position was that this is a pandemic of the elderly. That's what our data tells us, and that we're going to he was on Fox and Friends with the oldest war veteran in Florida, promoting that they had the shot before New York did, and that they were getting, people, especially the elderly and the at risk, vaccinated before anybody else. So I don't think that's his position. I do think though that he is reflex anti-mandate, and again, this goes back to what we had said about Trump in 2016, which was part of his magic. DeSantis is reflex anti-establishment elite. Reflex. So, Fauci comes out and says something, he immediately tells you that man has told more lies than truth, so you should doubt every single word that comes out of his mouth. And I think DeSantis has the majority position. I do. And Trump has a record that he's trying to he's trying to thread this needle, and defend that record. Why did I listen to these guys? Why did I do this? I always thought, and this is why I really get angry at some of these neocons who helped Biden win. Now they want to complain about Joe Biden because every time they do, John Podhoretz, read his last column in the New York Post. All right. Perfect example. He is lamenting and had been for 4 years about how much Donald Trump lies. Yet I counted 3 major lies in his last column. And one of them was that Donald Trump somehow didn't promote the vaccine. That is crazy. I mean, that's not revisionist history. That's straight up, I'm a liar. And because I helped to get Joe Biden elected, and I am responsible I'm in part responsible for the situation, the tenuous situation the country finds itself in, I have to make excuses for myself by telling lies. Donald Trump, of course, is the author of Operation Warp Speed. He is the only public figures, major public figures, to ever say don't get the vaccine was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden during the damn election. When they told people that it was developed under Donald Trump, it's the Trump vaccine, and we don't know whether it's going to be safe or not. They did that. Donald Trump never said not to get vaccinated and that it's possible the vaccine is dangerous. He never said that. And by the way, I don't want to, I know we're streaming on YouTube, so I got to be a bit careful here. But these are the lies that they think they're telling themselves to make themselves feel better and to alleviate themselves of any personal responsibility because they're childish, they're immature, and they're elitists. That's what do you expect? But they're Richard, childish and they're immature, and they put that all above policy, serious policy discussion.
But we shouldn't be surprised. They made it their profession to lie. Okay,
professional liars.
That's exactly what they did. It was the first thing they thought up as they got up in the morning. Which one I'm going to pick today? Okay, and so they have totally polluted the public sphere and journalism. Okay, and now they got stuck with the guy. Okay, and they're the ones trying to thread the needle right now. Okay, they're the ones that.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's the way I look at it. And it's my own personal opinion, Biden is their president and only their president. And nobody else who loves Joe Biden. Nobody loves Joe Biden. And I was thinking about this waiting for us to come on today. George and I have mentioned many times, people will jump off of buildings for Trump. People will jump off of buildings for Obama. People actually will jump off buildings for Hillary Clinton, okay? But who's going to do anything for Joe Biden? No one, not even his own staff, okay? And then you have this media that have just become pathological liars about reality. And just to kind of fill in a point from the first question here, bare shelves, well, I don't know, I'm a millionaire. My driver picks everything up for me. Empty shelves, okay? I mean, what's going on? Okay, empty shelves, what's that? I haven't been in a store in 10 years.
The NORAD Santa tracker.
There's another question here following on what we've been talking about from Flying Boar. And he says that Trump's problem is that he wanted to be liked by the Washington establishment. And politics is about getting the job done for your base, not about being liked or not. And I think that is absolutely true, that when he ran, it looked like he couldn't care less what people thought about him. I mean, when he announced, I think it was in December 2015, the Muslim ban, he said, I'm just not going to let in anyone from any Muslim country. I thought that was the end of his campaign. I mean, it just seemed such an outrageous thing to say. But, he touched the base because, the base said, okay, it's unpolished, but what he's saying is that he's going to protect us. This is after the terrorist attacks. I mean, there were a lot of these terrorist attacks in November, December 2015. And he just said, we're not letting anyone from any Muslim countries until we find out what the hell's going on. But because it seemed like, well, here's a man who really wants to protect the American people from terrorists, that he got by. I mean, just as when he got by when he said John McCain is no hero in my eyes. A hero is someone who doesn't get captured. Again, everyone thought, including me, that that's the end of the campaign.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
But once he got into power, it seemed like he abandoned that, and he seemed to care a great deal what the New York Times thought of him. How many interviews did he give to the New York Times? And every time he did it, they, of course, wrote it up in a way that was extremely unflattering to Trump. And then he would tweet out his complaint about the New York Times article about him. Well, what do you expect if you're going to talk to Maggie Haberman? What do you think Maggie Haberman is going to write about you? So
Woodward and Bernstein, George, I'm going to talk to Woodward and Bernstein. And what did they do?
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable mistake. I can't, honestly, that one stunned me. Some of the other ones I like attributed to, this guy's got a Nixon complex, and he very much reminded me of Richard Nixon, who wanted to be liked, and he couldn't understand why people, in that world just would not give him the credit that he believed he deserved outside of detente, which they did give him credit for first, but that's because that worked with their ideology. But, Donald Trump very much appeared to be have that same kind of complex to me. Now, I know personally, because I've heard this from some people, but the racial things that they said about him, he doesn't like black people, taking this stuff about Mexican rapists that hurt his the man's feelings. Like he never had this in all of his years as a real estate developer, a celebrity. Everybody loved him. And he couldn't believe they were painting him like that. And that hurt. So I think maybe that some of that came into play, guys, where he thought maybe if he played nice, they would play nice too. Look, that's just fundamentally wrong. And that's not how Washington, D.C. works.
Yeah, but Joe Biden says boy and things like that. And then, the Negro leagues and all of that. I mean,
he talks really well for a black man.
He's
remember that
segregationist to everyone. Don't you know that? Okay, right. People are socialized when they're basically in their 20s. Okay, so Joe Biden was socialized in the 1940s, 50s. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do I need to say more? I mean, that's why when he says something about diversity and inclusion, I just like, did you learn those words 15 minutes ago? You don't even know what they don't even know what they mean.
But that's the thing, that Trump's record is that he actually had very good relations with black leaders back when he was a businessman. I mean, he had good relations with Jesse Jackson. I think he even had good relations with Sharpton. I think that I've seen photographs of them attending
absolutely
some big events, and it always seemed very friendly.
Gave them a lot of money.
Exactly. So it was always a silly thing to come up with this idea that he's a racist. There was nothing at all. But it was a very cynical thing. It was very cynical to tar him a racist and then fascist. And that was just in 2016. It's like, this is a man who's been in the public eye since the 1970s, and now suddenly you'd say, oh, he's a racist and a fascist. You mean all this time? No one ever noticed this, that he was a fascist. So it was a very cynical ploy, because you throw enough dirt at someone, some of it is going to stick. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean,
George, remember the S-hole countries?
Right.
Well, there are a lot of S-hole countries in the world.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, everyone, but it's true.
Yeah, and 22 years ago, the New York Times, he was the quote of the day in the New York Times, and the quote was about why he was leaving the Reform Party, and it was 100% an anti-racist quote, that he would have no association with David Duke. Yep. So that he was very disappointed in their embracing of a man with a record like that. And, I'm basically New York through and through, and we don't have racist bone in our body. I don't have a racist bone in my body, and I just can't be a part of this anymore. Whatever he said, you guys could go back and, I'm summarizing, but he actually put it very eloquently, which Trump did back then. A lot of people who don't know, you might know of him, but you didn't follow his career. I'm a native New Yorker. I remember Donald Trump sitting down with Oprah Winfrey and basically her falling at his feet and hoping he ran for president. I kid you not. A lot of people did that to Donald Trump. He was very well spoken. He was very calm, usually very collected guy. I tried to tell a lot of people, if you read The Art of the Deal, you know what he was doing in the primary in 2016. He was coming in and just being the bull in the china shop. And then you just want it to stop and you don't know how to handle it. So, and he did, he confused everybody. I mean, it's not that long of a book. You could have seen what he was doing. He sucked all the oxygen out of the room, but that's not the Donald Trump behind closed doors when you shake hands with the guy and talk to him. It's just not who he is. That was like, I don't want to say it was an act, but it was like, he's combative. He is a counterpuncher. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, it's just not the Donald Trump who fixed the ice skating rink because New York City was totally incompetent. That guy was totally different. It's not the Donald Trump who once pulled over and gave a guy a ride in his limo and, paid somebody's mortgage without even asking.
George,
these are stories you'll hear.
George and I really liked the story. Was it, George, when it was a NATO summit or something, or a G20 or something? And
NATO, NATO summit,
Slovenian president.
Yeah, the Montenegrin. Yeah.
Montenegrin.
I don't know whether you saw that, Richard. There's all these NATO leaders, 29 of them at the time, and they were all kind of walking along, and the Montenegrin president was at the head of the group, and Trump was behind him, and then Trump didn't like being standing behind this guy, so he kind of picked him up, pushed him aside, and got in front of the group.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump.
And then he kind of brushed himself down, like Tony Soprano.
Yeah, but he was a bully, remember?
Right.
Disrespect of our ally. No, Trump was saying, I'm numero uno. This is my alliance. Get in line. He was just doing what all of the neocons wanted him to do.
Yeah, right. Which isn't that ironic, though, honestly, his presence and how he would deal with foreign leaders is, he was dominant. He was a dominant guy. And even Macron, he talked crap behind his back. Donald Trump would get him in front of him, and all of a sudden he fell at his feet too. And they were best of friends because Macron just buckled. And there is many stories with Donald Trump that go, even he lobbed Tomahawk missiles into Syria just to punk the guy while he was eating a piece of cake. I mean, this is who Donald Trump is. And you would think that neocons would love that. But because he doesn't want to, because he's not willing to use the primacy of U.S. power to change the world in our image, then none of that matters. Well, they would rather have a frail old man, who is making us look like fools. Guys, did you see the NORAD thing, the Santa tracker? Let's go, talk about out of touch. And the guy is just like, I wish you have a Merry Christmas too. And let's go, Brandon. And hangs up. And the president and the first lady are like, yeah, let's go, Brandon. They just look so, we look like we're a laughing stock. I don't know how you can see
Right.
that would never have happened to Donald Trump. And if
just
it
to follow
did,
up
you
on
told the
that,
guy
I
to
think
shut.
the deep state kind of likes Biden because that's it. That Biden
Sweet.
just does what they want him to do. I mean,
Yep.
Trump also. I mean, as we've been saying, he didn't really do
Yep.
that much to thwart the deep state, but he do a little bit. But with Biden, I mean, it's a safe pair of hands. I mean, he's just there, and the CIA does whatever it's doing, the military does whatever it's doing, FBI does what it's doing, and Biden just happily signs off on it. I mean, so
Nobody bothers him.
when the military does something provocative in the Black Sea, you think, without bothering to consult him, Biden just sort of, shrugs off. So I think they're very happy with him. I mean, the voters aren't happy, but I think the powerful institutions are, I think, very happy. It's their ideal president. He's not going to, mess up anyone, interfere with what anyone else is doing. So they've got their ideal president.
And George,
Yeah, George. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I'm going to
Sorry.
say, George, they're drooling over the prospect of a Kamala Harris presidency.
You're right, exactly, because she even knows less about foreign policy than he does, so they just do whatever they do. Yeah.
I mean, there are no scoldings in the Situation Room.
Yeah.
There are no, get your, what's in here.
Right.
Didn't I tell you to end that covert war in Syria? And by the way, where's my plan for Afghanistan? There's none of that going on.
Right.
Which that was really the moment in April of 2018 where they were like, we have to get rid of this guy. We have got to get rid of this guy because we're not going to beat him at the polls. We did not get a large enough majority. We didn't take the Senate. No, this is a problem. What are we going to do with this guy? We have to come up with plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, and on and on and on. Russia didn't do it. They were hoping to put that guy in check. And you can't put Donald Trump in check like that. It's just not going to happen. Which really is an interesting question though, guys. Like how would, there are, I kind of almost hate speculating about this. People always ask me, why aren't you putting Ron DeSantis in hypothetical matchups with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and other Democrats? Why is only Donald Trump in the questionnaire in the poll we do? Well, there's two reasons. One, he doesn't have high enough name recognition, and he would probably either be much closer or even down simply because people just don't know Ron DeSantis as much as they know Donald Trump. That's number one. Number two, he's not going to run if Donald Trump runs. He made that very clear. It's just not going to happen. He'll be in number two. Unless you guys, maybe some of your suspicions are right and he doesn't have the fire in the belly. I know a lot of his supporters thought, oh, he's definitely coming back immediately after Joe Biden was inaugurated. But I was told that he just, it hurts to lose. It hurts, and people who lose go home and they reflect on it. And the plan, from what I heard, was to just, and I was stunned to hear it, was basically to pick up the pieces of your brand, rebuild the brand, and defend against the political lawfare they knew was coming their way. And that was it. And now it's back to, I'm going to run. Basically, he's basically outing it now. So if something changes, I would add Ron DeSantis. If Donald Trump steps out of the way, it's Ron DeSantis to lose. He takes a major battleground state off the table. But so does Donald Trump. Donald Trump's winning Florida by 5 points or more next time. That's going to happen. But Ron DeSantis would take it off the table completely. Democrats wouldn't even fight for it. Probably it would be a waste of their money. But they would defend those Rust Belt states. And it really comes down to, let's say Ron DeSantis did win. How would he deal with this? And does he want to deal with it? Because look at what happened. This is one of the things that people never could get through their minds, even if they hated Trump. They never saw the consequence of what the deep state did to Donald Trump, which is, what if another guy or another girl in the future, another man or woman in the future, who really was earnest and really did, stand up for people, everyday people, and they had no connection to the political world, what happened to Donald Trump is going to impact their decision on whether or not they even want to run. Do you want that to happen to your family? Do you want that to happen to your brand, your businesses, your personal life? There are a lot of good people out right now running for Congress. We get calls every day. And they want to know, listen, I feel like I want to do something, I want to serve, but I have these interests over here. What do you think is going to happen to them? And I have to be honest, they're going to destroy you. I mean, they're going to try to, at least, to destroy you. So if your spouse has this, if you personally have this brand or have this business, you better be prepared for them to come at it and try to shut you down. I mean, I hate to do that because you don't want to deter good people from running, but you also don't want them to go into something with their eyes wide shut. You know, I mean, they got to know what they're getting into.
Yeah, but Richard,
right?
I don't think that the media landscape, what we're calling the deep state, I don't think they will ever allow that to happen again, ever.
Yeah, they're gonna. That's I 100%.
No, because
at least do everything in their power to stop it, Peter.
See, but that's what Trump, the idea means to them. He someone that will disrupt the status quo. This is something they will never tolerate because they feel that they found themselves asleep at the switch, had no idea what was going on in the flyover states and all had, and they still don't care. Okay. And they were completely off guard. I mean, anyone that has two brain cells to rub together is that Hillary Clinton is the most unattractive person that has ever run for president of the United States. Okay, but ever. Okay,
ever.
And that they're blinded by their ideology and their self-interest, okay? And Trump was something that they could not, and they still cannot comprehend. And that's why, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was in the waning days, or maybe in the middle of the Trump administration, there should be maybe a commission to vet future presidential candidates. Remember that? I mean, my goodness, okay? And so just to add an extra layer to what you said, Richard, here, why would anyone want to do that? Why would anyone want to throw their hat in the ring to be exposed to the, so because not only, would they find their your skeleton, the skeletons in your closet, they're going to put skeletons in your closet.
Well, now it's different, right? Now that's the difference. That's the difference, guys. Back in, the pre-Donald Trump era, it was just, we're going to try to find those skeletons and we're going to try to expose those skeletons or make a big deal out of like small skeletons, right? Well, now it's, I will fabricate skeletons and put them into your closet and swear up and down, and every media outlet will help me that those skeletons are real. That you put them there. That's your closet and they're there because of you. Something you did. I mean, that's the difference this time. I'm not sure I know that they'll do everything they can to prevent it, but just, kind of history tells me these people go down all the time. And the deep state media, that whole class is acting, and has been since Joe Biden was inaugurated, acting like an unstable, illegitimate regime. And they're acting draconian because they're acting out of fear. So they're they're locking down and militarizing the Capitol. That is not the confident action. That is not the action of a confident regime who is legitimate, stable, credible, and knows it just won the most votes, allegedly, in the history of any presidential election. That is the action of a illegitimate, not credible, and very afraid status quo.
But they have, I think that's a very good point. But they do have these weapons at their disposal, which is for instance, I mean, now impeachment. Trump is a kind of a remarkable character. I mean, he withstood 2 impeachments. You have to wonder about Ron DeSantis. I mean, he's governor of Florida. He hasn't had to endure everything was thrown Trump, and you kind of wonder whether he would be able to withstand it. I mean, so far, he's done well enough, but at the same time, he's basically in the shadow of Trump. He's never really been the front and center, the target of all of the attacks. And and I'm sure a lot of his courage also comes from Trump himself. So you kind of wonder what happens if somehow Trump disappears. Trump just moves into the background and DeSantis is front and center, whether he would be able to withstand. Not everyone can withstand the threat of impeachment. That's a very, very
George,
nasty
that's where
process.
George, you really just finished my thought for me. That's where I was going. I kind of got distracted a little bit, but that is exactly where I was going. Mitt Romney would have resigned. If Mitt Romney had won in 2012 and he had to undergo the kind of assault that Donald Trump had to undergo. No Republican president would ever have withstood, and by the way, be leading in the polls right now. I mean, the last 32 polls, Donald Trump led in 29 of them or something. I mean, and that's not just me. That's not just the fair pollster. That's the unfair pollsters out there, the ridiculous pollsters. Yeah. That includes them. This is not something that, look, people cave. Mitt Romney got bullied by Monica, what's her name? Candy Crowley, during a debate. Yeah, these people, let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, just for people who always try to argue with me about Ron DeSantis, I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying right now there's no evidence he can. And also, I'm not sure a lot of people remember what it was like before Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That most of these people could not withstand this. Their wives say, Ron, I don't want to do this anymore. This pressure is enormous. And Donald Trump is who he is, but also his family who supported him is who they are. And just like him, his wife, you can't shake that woman. By the way, Joe Biden, your Christmas decorations sucked. I never, ever want to hear again about the taste of the former first lady, who, by the way, is not only the prettiest, but the classiest first lady with the best taste we have ever had. All right, Jackie, it was way overblown. Okay, way overblown. That woman was the real deal. Joe Biden's Christmas decorations were horrible. All right, I have to throw that in there because I didn't even, you kind of don't realize until there's the compare and contrast in front of you. The difference between Melania and Dr. Jill. She's
doctor with a stethoscope hanging from her neck.
Yeah, but this goes back to this is what we keep going back to this here, because you have all of the liberal media, the establishment, saying how beautiful the decorations are. Okay, I mean they see what now we just have gaslighting 24/7. Okay,
it was 24/7.
That's all we have, and on all of the topics, every once in a while, I'll watch a block of CNN or MSNBC. I mean, they have no contact with what's going on with average people whatsoever. Inflation is actually a good thing. I mean, wrap your head around that. How in the world can they say that and believe they know the condition of the body politic at all? And I think the example of the decorations is just perfect. I mean, it's just quintessential. The emperor has no clothes, okay? And they keep talking about how wonderfully dressed and the presentation of it all. I mean, I get friends asking me all the time, I say, what's wrong with the president of the United States? What's wrong with him? He can't talk.
Right. Anyway, there's a question here from Flying Boar who says that Trump should look at Putin and see how he governs the country. Putin doesn't care what the New York Times or the Washington Post says about him. Putin just does what he's elected to do. He doesn't care about criticism. Well, he probably doesn't care about what the New York Times and Washington Post says about him. I know the question is does he care about what the Russian media say about him? I mean, I think he doesn't care much about what the opposition media, the Neue Gazette and others, what they say about him. But the ones that are friendly to him, the official kind of media outlets, I mean, if they started criticizing him, some of the people who are generally very supportive of him, he might care about that. What do you think, Peter?
What the criticism is, and there's a lot of criticism, it's the criticism of the government. Okay, that's where people criticize politics. It's not personalized here. I mean, every once in a while there'll be like a member of parliament that'll get involved in some kind of TikTok scandal or something like that, drinking, booze, women and stuff like that. That'll make the news. But most of it, the commentary is, education reform, pension reform. This is what people that do talk about. Okay. So other than that, I mean, it's a totally different media environment. There's no, what's the term, George? There's no cult of personality at all.
No, I think there's no cult of, but I think if, for instance, not at the moment, but in the past, if there was a feeling that Putin was a doormat and that the West was just simply riding roughshod over him and he wasn't resisting, that would bubble up in
We saw it with
official
Yeltsin.
TV stations. There's some of the usually pro-government commentators
Yeah, the
saying,
pro.
"Hey,
Yeah.
yeah,
We
you're
saw
being
that with Yeltsin. We saw that with Medvedev.
right,
okay?
right,
We know
right,
that.
exactly." But I think even with Putin, I think there've been times when basically officially anointed journalists were critical of Putin. Yeah, you're being too
I'll give you an example.
conciliatory towards Russia, too conciliatory towards Israel. You remember when the Israelis shot down that Russian aircraft? I mean, there were Russians killed. And there was criticism. Hey, you're just allowing Israel to shoot down our aircraft. So there is that sort of criticism. At the moment, they're kind of liking it because he's being tough. But there is criticism.
There is a real, in a recent example of all this, George, I think I've told you before, is that when the coup regime in Kiev started the anti-terrorist operation against the Donbass, there was a groundswell of anger in all across Russia, saying, why isn't the Russian government doing more to help? Okay,
exactly.
Because it's one of those classic examples, and this should be taught in journalist schools if they teach journalism anymore.
They don't.
Putin is doing too much in Ukraine, when the body politic of Russia was saying Russia isn't doing enough to protect its brethren in the eastern part of Ukraine. I mean, it's completely opposite, the way it was being approached. And he took heat for it. He took he dropped in the polls. He comfortably sits around in the mid 80s. It went down to the low 70s. I mean, he took a hit for that, and then the government adjusted its policy. So, the public opinion polls. There's one that George and I know best is Levada. It's an independent polling agency. No friend of Vladimir Putin, the founder, Mr. Levada himself, has passed away. But I mean, everybody goes to that. You should take a look at him as a pollster, okay? Because he's if you want to know what's going on in Russia, go to the Levada polling center, because you're going to get the real deal there. All the other polling, I take it with a grain of salt. Levada, I think they're really good.
Can I add something to that? To that question, because if you're going to compare Trump to Putin, there's a lot of similarities there with like who opposes Putin, who opposes Trump. The difference, I think, with Russia and the United States is that you don't have as big of this political class, this elitist class in Russia that we are now having in the United States, right? And that because in the United States, we also include look, this is not the nicest way to refer to these people, but we don't know how to classify them. You'll hear the media say college educated, right? And it's too simple. There are wannabe elites in this country. They're wannabes. They're not really elites. They just want to agree with them. It's a social desirability bias. They went to these academic institutions that made that, the decent thing to be, the decent worldview to have, the right one. And by the way, the smarter one. Don't be a stupid person, right? It's just, we have this in our country, and it leads to a bigger opposition to Trump than anything that could build up against Putin, who, by the way, it's interesting you brought up that conflict in Ukraine, and when it first broke out, really, and people were talking about Putin being too interventionist on this side of the globe, but in Russia they're like, those are our brothers, and by the way, in the eastern region of that country, they are pro-Russian. They feel like they're Russian. We wanted to know whether or not Americans were really being told the truth. Putin doesn't need to steal elections in any area. I mean, this idea that Vladimir Putin somehow rigs the elections, gentlemen, and by the way, not only his own, others around in the surrounding areas of that, he doesn't need to. He's incredibly popular. It would be ridiculous to even try. And interesting you said that, and I'll check that pollster out, Peter, because when we did it, we have panels all over the world, from India to Russia to the United States. I'm known for American polling, of course, but in polling in the United States. But when we have the panel in Russia is really quite big, and we can reach a number of people. He was at like 78%, 76, 78. I'd have to go back and check my records. And I brought it. I talked to Robert Barnes about it. I'm like, Robert,
Right.
This idea he needs to steal an election is ridiculous. His approval rating is unheard of.
That's right. And apropos of Levada, when they ask, like, who is your favorite leader? So, for instance, we always hear in, The Economist and New York Times, Russia's leading opposition figure, Alexei Navalny. He's a leading, you look at Nevada, polls, they're only about 2-3%. I mean, no one regards him as a leading opposition figure. The Communist Party is much more popular than Navalny. Zhirinovsky's Liberal Democratic Party is much more popular than Navalny. But according to The Economist, Financial Times, New York Times, the leader of the opposition, Alexei Navalny. I mean, it's completely. That's Levada. That's not a pro-government polling agency.
But Russians themselves never say Navalny is the leader of the opposition. That's never said. That is never uttered by a single Russian. They don't think about it in those terms, okay?
That doesn't surprise me.
I want to finish off a point that Richard brought up here, is that Western elites have been infiltrated by charlatans, okay? Charlatans. Where I live, if you're a charlatan, you're not going to get very far, okay? It's just simply not going to be that way. The reverence that people have for higher education and for expertise, I mean, it is of a completely different caliber, okay? But they're not flamboyant people. They're not TikTok people. They're not on Twitter all the time. It's just a very different cultural experience. And they're not charlatans, because if you screw up, you don't fall forward, okay? You don't fall up, okay? You basically disappear, okay? Because you're incompetent, and incompetence is not tolerated, okay? It's very simple that way. I mean, you can be look at Pete Buttigieg. I mean, he is so incompetent. He's on the bench for the nomination in 2024. That's how incompetence works in the West.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg, I last week I went on a rant about this guy, but it's true. And I think there is a difference between, it's almost stoic, about the Russian people that we don't have anymore. When we did do that poll, what did they tell us? Why did they value Putin? It was because he was strong. He made Russia look strong, but also they felt like he took them out of communism and gave them the opportunity that economic. Most of it was really economic. And from a standpoint of where does our nation now stand in the grand scheme of things, and the quality of life for our people. They understood, there's an oligarchy the West talks about, but Putin doesn't let them have too much, and they feel like it, or at least they feel that way, and that they got the promises of communism without the communism from Putin. That's kind of the direction he put them in, and you would never see that. I think Americans used to value strength of character and strength, the idea of strength. We did. I mean, manifest destiny. I mean, you wouldn't have such a thing if you didn't believe in some the value and the virtue of strength, personal and collective strength and
leadership, simple leadership.
Yeah. Leadership. That's really what it comes down to.
A few years ago, there was pension reform. No sitting government in the world likes doing pension reform. You know why? Because you're going to get a lot of people angry from the get-go. From the get-go. Okay? But kick the can for another 5 years, 10 years. No, it's got to be dealt with. It's got to be done. And it was done. And it was unpopular, of course. Okay? But it's been done. Okay? George, you remember when they got rid of all of the social payments? Everything. Water is free, electricity is free, and all of those communist things. They said, no, we can't do it. It's unsustainable. But there will be a social payment, which I think is a good idea, because you have to decide, and you want to pay your electric bill or buy wine. Okay, you have to decide. You build character that way. You make people make their own decisions. You encourage their own agency. That was very unpopular. Ended up being a very good idea. It had difficulty being implemented. It was on a massive scale for the entire country. There were glitches. Yes, there were. But that's a distant memory right now. So my point is that do things because it's right, not because it's going to make you popular.
Yeah, like the tax reform Putin put through.
Oh,
Libertarians, American libertarians were loving it. And we all forget now, of course, again, it's been the Russia craze for 4 years. So we forgot, about the praise that was heaped on Putin for that flat tax. And that, by the way, is not that Trump's tax reform wasn't good. It's just that I'm not sure you would be able to even get to a point where Putin was able to get to with a flat. Because personally, if you are not a leftist, and I mean that by saying you should call yourself even a centrist to right wing, you should be in favor more of a flat tax than any kind of a progressive income tax. That which, by the way, was implemented based on the premise it would tax the rich and it would never tax working people unless there was a war. Well, there was a war, and they never gave it back. That's how we got this. But yeah, with Pete Buttigieg, what made this man qualified, because we're not talking about this enough. He is the secretary of the Department of Transportation because he picked up the phone when Obama called and he caved to Obama, who pressured everybody to leave the primary before Super Tuesday because Bernie Sanders was going to beat Joe Biden. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. He horse traded for that position. He was promised, basically in the worst kind of politics available, which is when a powerful guy who's popular calls and offers you something in a bribe, a professional bribe, in exchange for you conducting yourself in a way that they want you to. That's what Pete Buttigieg did. What qualified him to ever be the secretary of the Department of Transportation? He was a mayor of a rather small town in the Midwest and didn't have a good track record, not on crime, not on anything that mayors, as an executive of a city are really entrusted to do, guys. Anything police power related. The fire department hated him. The police department hated him. People who needed protection in high-risk communities didn't like him. He didn't do a good job. And he decided because why? Let's be real. I'm going to run for president. And because he does, and he's in the way, and he's one of the alternatives who is viewed to be moderate to Bernie Sanders, he was in Joe Biden's lane, his electoral lane, and they bribed him out of it. Now we're in this situation because they bribed an unqualified moron to be the Department of Transportation head. That's it. Nobody is bringing this up. That's right. How we became the secretary.
But that's exactly, how did Obama get to be president? It was because the Democrats in 2008, they realized we've got Hillary Clinton on our hands. There is no way that Hillary Clinton can win an election. We need to create a personality. We've got to find someone who is the non-Hillary Clinton. And a lot of people just supported him for no other reason than he wasn't Hillary Clinton. That was it. But he was entirely a manufactured candidate. No track record of anything. He'd done a couple of years in the state Senate, and then he won both elections, both in the primary and in the general election for the U.S. Senate because of a sex scandal. A sex scandal took out his opposition. So, and then boom, they said, hey, he's a well-spoken, tall, thin black guy. And who's going to dare vote against him? So, but I think Buttigieg was in that sort of a lane. They kind of, there were a lot of trying to push him. He checks all the boxes. He's gay.
He's a member of the protected class, right? He's gay. He's a member of the protected class. He's a gay man who also served in the military, which was hyped to a ridiculous amount, like the guy was Rambo or something. Not to demean anybody's service, but there's a difference between a pogue and somebody who is a combat-oriented MOS. And I'm sorry, but that's true. But he checked right. He ticked the boxes, guys. That's it. He had no professional qualifications, none. And yet, because look, the first 4 primary states hated Joe Biden. Can we be real? He got killed in Iowa, even despite polls showing he was going to win the Iowa caucuses. I kid you not, Monmouth University.
Gaslighting.
he was going to win. He got creamed in New Hampshire, where, by the way, there was supposed to be a moderate vote who was going to help. He got creamed in Nevada, where Bernie Sanders nearly took the black vote from him, the black caucus vote from him. So, and he was supposed to be the candidate who was going to win the black vote overwhelmingly. It didn't happen. In fact, even in Iowa, the minority vote, the small, but still there, Bernie Sanders won it because of the satellite areas, caucus sites that he set up. He really diminished what people thought to be that election day, a caucus goer vote, caucus. But it's not the same thing as a primary vote. But
and who won that? Who won that caucus?
Well, by the way, let me just say, Bernie Sanders won that caucus, right. But Pete Buttigieg was claiming he had won the Iowa caucuses with the media helping him, even though we found, and the idea that this, again, election reform, if you supported Bernie Sanders, you should be with Trump supporters on the need for stricter election reform. They screwed you in Iowa. They took all of the wind out of your sails by misappropriating state delegate equivalents. Right. We went over those tallies, and I can't even tell you, we got to go back and read the article on PPD. The number of state delegate equivalents that clearly should have been allocated to Bernie Sanders on caucus night. That's no reason that makes sense whatsoever. Were simply written down as Pete Buttigieg. Right. No, I mean, we found this everywhere, all over the state, but really concentrated in some of those areas where people thought Joe Biden was going to do well. So it completely looked like to us, observing from the outside, going through the record, it looked like to us, it was not an app problem. It was a, oh crap, Joe Biden is getting killed problem. Who are we going to use at the last minute to help stop Bernie Sanders? And they misappropriated those SDEs to Pete Buttigieg. And later Bernie corrected some of it, and his campaign caught on right away. And by the way, we immediately contacted them, and and we said, have you gone through these precincts, these caucus precincts? Have you gone through them? These are your delegates. These are your SDEs. Do you know about this? And they did. They didn't realize the breadth of it. But it doesn't matter in a primary, guys. You know how it works. Momentum is everything. So he actually barely, New Hampshire was very close, even though it should not have been, because a lot of people believe Pete Buttigieg either won or was going to ultimately win Iowa. So they changed their mind in New Hampshire. Caucus and primary voters go with momentum. They do. And then, by the way, the money dries up when you don't win primaries or caucuses that you're expected to win. So they hurt Bernie. And the fact that he was able to even put together the diverse coalition he was in 2020 with all of that against him again, not once, but twice for the second time. Right. For the second time. And then Obama just came in, despite the fact that he can't stand Biden. And that's why you have Pete Buttigieg as your transportation secretary. It was a professional bribe because Pete Buttigieg couldn't stop him at the ballot box.
I have a question for you, Richard. HRC.
Hillary Rodham Clinton? What about her? What about her? What
about
her? You think she'll get in? Well, you think she'll make a comeback?
Okay, she's banging on the door. Come on.
Oh, Peter, this woman is dying to be president, and always that. And look, this may be one of the best things, like, Joe Biden's mental capacity and Kamala Harris's incapacity to become popular may be the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Rodham Clinton, because she's been, dying. She would have probably tried to challenge Trump again. The party didn't want her. There were serious considerations going into 2020. The party didn't want her. They said it was time for somebody else. You had your chance. You couldn't beat him. But that was settled pre-pandemic, by the way. That question, they basically told the Clintons, you got to move on, before COVID was an issue. That changed the dynamic of the campaign.
Well, one of the things George and I have pointed out, which may be just serendipity, circumstantial, but and I think it accounts a little bit for Trump's media appearances, because I think that the Clinton people understood that what Trump was doing is creating a juxtaposition, Trump's presentation and Biden's, which of course are diametrically opposed. Hillary and her evil clan thought, We need to show we're in control. We know what's going on. And, I don't know why they decided to read her acceptance speech. I thought that was a really weird thing that they tried to do. Nonetheless, some of the media appearances that she's made since, she's juxtaposing herself to Biden as well. And I don't think this is by accident. What do you think?
Well, listen, let me ask you about this too, though, Peter, because even somebody like me, and I imagine many others, I think about that. I don't doubt for a second that a Clinton 2.0 White House, Hillary Clinton, would be more competent than Biden's.
Yep, I have to.
She would be a more competent president. I mean, really, not that I'd be thrilled about. Look, she's not a good woman. She's not a good person. Not that I'd be thrilled.
But the interesting
Libya
thing
just
is,
hurt, sticks in my craw, George. Libya,
Right.
that man. If you read those cables, I don't care what he did before. American leaders aren't human rights champions either anymore. Let's get real.
Right.
Gaddafi was begging her, begging for her help. He was, what's the word I guess I'm looking for? He was playing ball. Bush, his agreement with Bush, he played ball.
Yep.
And he was used as a scapegoat the man was killed, stuck like a pig, just so Hillary Clinton could have a gem to run on when she ran for president.
Well, that came out.
Ladies and gentlemen, that happened.
That came out in all those emails, in the emails that were published.
They're right in the cables. They're right in the cables, George.
Wicked, exactly. He was, and that was Sid Blumenthal was clearly telling her, "This is your war. Yeah, run with it. This is going to be your issue." And there's no question, because Gaddafi had given up his nuclear arsenal.
Absolutely.
Very, very foolish thing to have done. And he gave that up. And he was playing ball with all the European leaders, with Berlusconi. I mean, basically to prevent mass migration. I mean, he said, "I'm what's saving Europe from the third world colonizing Europe."
Sarkozy took money from him.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. So I think Gaddafi, was very hard done by. He was actually quite a competent leader. I mean, Libya was doing quite well under him. But because of the cynicism of Clinton and the awfulness, the self-righteous sanctimoniousness of Susan Rice and Samantha Power, these three Valkyrie, they went after Gaddafi. But the interesting thing is,
while he pled, George, on those cables, it was watching a man beg. It's horrible. Ladies and gentlemen, after the show, of course, not now, go to WikiLeaks and just Google in their search his last name. You will see personal cables from him. Like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything the Western powers asked me to do. I'm doing everything George Bush asked me to do. I cracked down on the Muslim extremists. I redirected the money you appropriated to these programs. I did everything you wanted me to do, and you're gonna let me destabilize and basically, you're gonna feed me to the wolves. They didn't even respond to him. They didn't even respond to repeated cables. Why? Because look, that interview she did, I think it was CBS News. It was with CBS or ABC. It was leaked, before she's putting her microphone on. They bring it up. She doesn't really think it's the interview yet. And she says, "Well, what about Libya? We came, we saw, he died," and laughed.
Tackles.
That's right. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's an evil person.
So, Richard,
that is an evil person.
No, I agree. But just going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, there's a question here for you, Richard, which I'm also very interested in, which is again from Drearier Spider. He's asking about the South Carolina primary. What happened at the South Carolina primary? Was Obama's campaigning and endorsement the only factor in Biden's dramatic improvement? Well,
no.
What do you think happened? Yeah, go on.
James Clyburn has controlled the black vote in South Carolina, or the Democratic black vote in South Carolina, particularly because he represents the most concentrated area. And that was him. That was him saying, we're gonna pay this forward if you save this. And by the way, Obama signed off on it. So But he was the man on the ground. The phone calls he made, he's not man on the ground. I don't mean he was beating the pavement. He just knows he's got everybody who's necessary to win a Democratic primary in his Rolodex, and they all have IOUs, right next to their names. So he called in those IOUs, and he basically did not view Bernie Sanders to be the right candidate. That's why, Tom Steyer's money, Michael Bloomberg's money, that was never really going to be a factor. And Kamala Harris's, brain dead strategy to win it in South Carolina. It was ridiculous because she never had the support of the people who control the black vote in South Carolina. I mean, it's just nuts. They were going to be pro whoever Obama and that other lane was. And in the end, begrudgingly, it was Joe Biden.
Did Bloomberg's money play any kind of a role in that primary race?
No. Neither did Steyer, who spent a ton of money. And for a while, Steyer was polling above Kamala Harris with the black vote in South Carolina. So it looked like, but that was before the media and the party started to meddle, because context always matters. And when that effort with Obama and James Clyburn was happening, finally went underway, in full support of Joe Biden, you will see how not only national liberal media, but local South Carolina media began to put Joe Biden right in front and say, you know what? Joe Biden's always been there for us. When, as Peter has said, he was a segregationist. What are you talking about? But they went on the biggest campaign. I don't know. I don't even know the word. It's not a social desirability bias. It's something else. It's just a mass misinformation campaign where you just create and you fabricate somebody's record, and you become they push inevitability on you.
No, he was anointed. He was anointed. Yeah. Okay, that's what it was. I mean, on crosstalk, he won all the votes. And no. A few phone calls, IOUs called in, and he was anointed. And then everyone just said, well, of course, it's the obvious choice. And that happened in a 24-hour period.
And what's really, it's not, irony is probably not the word. It's probably, disgusting is probably the more accurate word. The most disgusting part about it is that from South Carolina, New Hampshire, to California, to Texas, to Minnesota, Maine, all of these states, Joe Biden, Maine, Minnesota, especially too, that Joe Biden actually won. California, Bernie Sanders killed Joe Biden, but Colorado as well, younger vote, different. But they told us, the Democratic voter told us that they did not want Joe Biden. Even voters, groups that he ended up winning, they wanted Bernie Sanders, and their heart was with Bernie's platform, which is why Donald Trump turning to Joe on the stage during the debate and saying, who are you kidding, Joe? You're going to be a puppet. They're going to ride all over you. They're going to roll all over you. That, of course, was true because the voter was with them, was with Bernie. And in the end, that inevitability, they went on this mass campaign in a very short period of time to convince the Democratic voter, we know you like Bernie, but he can't win. And then there were all these polls, if you remember, showing Donald Trump killing Bernie Sanders in Florida, killing Bernie Sanders in Minnesota, or Midwestern states, and only Joe Biden could stop Trump in Florida. Only Joe Biden could stop Trump in North Carolina. Only Joe Biden it was the biggest load of crap. Right. I would argue, that there were states that Bernie could have put up a much bigger fight in. Ohio, Iowa. Absolutely. I think it honestly would have been, an actual contest. Now, Florida, Bernie would have gotten killed because of, especially in South Florida. But what was now here's a real irony. The idea that Bernie couldn't compete was predicated on his comment that he made about communism, and it was going to cost him hundreds of thousands of votes in South Florida. Those are hundreds of thousands of votes that Donald Trump won over Joe Biden anyway. So, I mean, the lies they told the Democratic voter was really something else. And I told people going into that election cycle, at 2016, was going to answer the question, can Republicans, tune out the media, tune out the kingmakers, and will they basically declare their independence and vote for the guy they want? Despite all the polls, the fake polls saying he's the weakest, et cetera, et cetera. The 2020 election was going to answer that question for me on the Democratic side. And unfortunately for Democrats, if you're a Democrat out there, you're still easily influenced. You're easily influenced.
But that's the interesting thing, Richard, because I remember during the election, I think you and Barnes and we were saying the same thing, which is that when political parties make a decision to nominate someone whom they don't particularly like, but whom they think will do well in the election, it always fails. In other words, when Republicans chose Mitt Romney, they didn't like Romney, but they thought, okay, but Romney's solid, middle of the road, centrist, he can win. When the Republicans did that for Bob Dole in '96, again, they didn't really want Bob Dole, but they thought, okay, yeah. And then the same went for
go back to Ford with that.
Like
the base wanted Reagan.
Exactly, that Gerald Ford. Walter Mondale, again, the Democrats didn't want Walter Mondale in '84. So whenever that happens, and that's why the decision they made with Biden was exactly the same, which again brings into question because that formula, which I think is a very strong formula, didn't work in 2020, which I kind of again calls into question what happened because I think when parties nominate someone they don't really want, it usually doesn't work.
Richard.
That's how the primary model was wrong. The coalition of states model was wrong. The electoral college model was wrong. The bellwether counties model was wrong. The voter analysis, everything that has been predictive, by the way, more predictive than polls, everything that has been predictive over the last, not over the last, since, the history of voting for popular, for presidents in the popular vote, or I should say by direct vote. All of that was wrong for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Or, Iowa, the 31 pivot counties in Iowa are among, and I know they're white, but they're among the most predictive that we've had in the last decades. And all 31 of them, Joe Biden failed to carry. Not a single pivot county. One of the major pivot predictors, Vigo County, is the most predictive. It was the same for Donald Trump as it was in 16. I could just go on and on and on with these numbers. No president has ever lost increasing his popular vote. That's it. Ever.
Well, the only thing, and I get chided for it, and after I say it, I don't say anything more because I'm not looking for a fight. But I do like to poke my finger at people and say, well, Joe Biden was inaugurated president.
Right.
No one can question that. But
no one can question that. Yeah.
There's a question here for Richard, which I think is interesting. This is from Saragon of Azure. That's a nice name. Why did the Republicans agree to the consent decree in the New Jersey election lawsuit? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, because they're largely weak there. Republicans aren't like Democrats. I get a lot of these questions. And the truth is, the establishment, the lawyer class of the Republican Party, they're just not they're not as competent. They're not. Democrats have a lot, we call them election law, right? It's like largely under election law. Democrats have more competent legal representation, but also they cave a lot. Look at Oregon in the redistricting of Oregon. They lost and they didn't even try to challenge it. They got killed. Why does this happen? Because typically the establishment of the party aligns themselves with the Democrats in order to basically be left alone in another area. That's what happened in New Jersey. That's what happened in California. That's what happened in Oregon. So what does that mean? The few Republicans who still have some, modicum of power, however you want to explain it, sacrifice the rest of anybody else's chances. So they're left alone on where they're vulnerable. And in New Jersey, again, look what they did to Citarelli, or, look what they did to him. All he needed was a little bit of help. They didn't help him. Why? I don't know what to do. It's hard to answer these questions without, telling Republicans you need a complete makeover. I mean, from ground to the top, you need a complete makeover. Your party is totally corrupt against you.
This is probably the thing that irritates me more than anything else. And George will think I'm a broken record here, okay, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that it's okay. It's easy to say, let's go, Brandon. It's okay to slam the Biden administration. They're listless. Okay. There's so many different power centers at play. That's obvious. I think your point, his COVID speech was written by at least 3 people, and no one signed off on it in the end. And they let the old man fly in the wind like that. Okay. That's called elder abuse. But my point is that I don't see a coherent, compelling alternative. Okay, and it's because it's so easy to spend. You can be Hannity all day.
But I think that,
it doesn't tell you. It's not a
right. But I think, Peter, I think that's a separate issue. I think from what Richard's just saying. I mean, the point is they don't fight. I mean,
no, they don't fight.
You have to fight. Whatever your agenda.
Start fighting.
No, I know that. I mean that. We can talk about having a positive agenda, but we also have to going and fighting in the courts. I mean, how the hell did that Raffensperger sign that agreement with Stacey Abrams? I mean, it was. I mean, there was no way Republicans were going to win once you signed that agreement. What was going on in the minds of those people? Him and Brian Kemp in signing such an agreement, and it just goes across the board. Republicans just don't have the Mark Elias's. I mean, they used to have that guy James Baker. I mean, Baker was not an inspiring Secretary of State or anything else, but Baker knew how to fight in the courts.
Such a good example.
Yeah. I was just, and even Olson, some of these guys who are somewhat competent, they hate Donald Trump and they hate his movement. So now they're like pretty much more aligned with Democrats anyway. They're willing to do these backdoor deals that screw over their own voters because they feel like it's important to protect the class more than it is to protect their base, the voters in their party. They never really liked them. Rush Limbaugh was always right about that. Republican Party never really liked their voters. They use them. I'm sorry, it's just true. They use them. They don't agree with them. They don't view them as the salt of the earth vote in this country. They don't view them as, the working man and woman. They view them as little people and means to an end. So they lie to you every 2 to 4 to 6 years to get your vote. And then they do nothing when it comes down to it. We were taking a minute to pick on John Thune last week. He runs to the New York Times to whine about how maybe even though Mitch McConnell's going to step down and I'm seen as the heir apparent, as if there is such a thing, to be the new Senate Majority Leader if we win, I don't know if I'm going to, because I don't know if I want to run for re-election. You see, I don't know that this is the party for me anymore. Donald Trump has a dominant stranglehold, and I don't really like the energy and where this is going. That is a charade. That is John Thune being mad at Donald Trump for exposing the charade. And now he's a coward who doesn't want to sit against his voters because he's afraid he may be publicly humiliated by being defeated. And this idea that this has anything to do with principle or morality, right? Like this is what's dictating their decision one way or the other is pretentious and it's insulting.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with that.
It's their social milieu. That's what they're most concerned with.
That's
okay.
It.
And it's, and I'm sure, after everything that is said and done, most Republicans, in Washington, D.C., they don't have a problem whatsoever with their Democratic colleagues whatsoever. They golf together, They yacht together, they drink expensive cocktails with little umbrellas and stuff like that. I mean, because it's a social cultural thing.
It's true.
Okay,
it's
true. I mean, having a beer What's that? Okay, that's for those people. Okay. No, I mean, if you're around it enough, you're suffocated by it, and then you start enjoying it because you see the perks of it all. You're right. Smelly Walmart people. Oh my God.
That's right.
That's see, and we always end on this depressing note because when listening to you gives me hope that this agenda with this regime is deflating and it'll pass. But then the Republican leadership is going to be in power. That gives me no hope whatsoever.
It's a 1-2 punch, Peter. It really is a 1-2 punch. And, it's not just one simple thing. I told people this after Donald Trump was elected, that, the election of one man, a revolution does not make, I mean, that just was reality. He needed infrastructure. He needed support. He needed party backing. He needed so much more than what he had. And unfortunately, the Republican infrastructure was still in place. The same people who had tried to stop him from winning in the first place. And like you said, they talk a good talk. But then Paul Ryan talks a good talk. He goes to the microphone after 2016 and he says, you know what? I've learned my lesson. Donald Trump heard a voice nobody else heard, and we're going to try to listen too. Then he goes with Mitch McConnell to the Mayflower Hotel. They drink together and joke about how stupid people are for electing Donald Trump and for how dumb you are for thinking that he was being earnest and that he's even going to allow a vote on the wall or any border security project to go forward, because they had asked him in that press conference about the wall. And he said, well, people obviously want the wall built. We're going to have to get that done. Then he and Mitch McConnell laughed about you behind your back, mocked Donald Trump behind your back. These are two-faced dirtbags. Senator John Thune 6 months ago he's such an idiot. He wasn't even using the word correctly. He was lamenting one night about how Donald Trump was using cancel culture, just like the left, to stop Republicans from winning their primaries.
Right.
I'm like, does this guy even know what cancel culture is?
That's what comes of it. It's a deliberate misunderstanding and misinterpretation of a term. I say, oh, it's cancel culture, which when he's talking about something completely different, which is,
totally different.
A political leader tries to remove his political opponents. That's what politics is all about. But what McConnell and what's the name? Ryan Ryan. Yeah, that's what they did, was actually managed to seriously damage Trump, because ultimately Trump did lose among his base. I mean, if there was one category of voters in which Trump did worse in 2020 than in 2016, I mean, it was among white men. I mean, that was what his vote went down in 2016. So that way, the fact that he wasn't able to build that wall, it did, or at least he wasn't able to complete the wall. I mean, it hurt him. It damaged.
Should have been Project One.
Yeah,
it did. And I'll tell you this too. Some of this again. If Donald Trump wants to run in 2024. He's going to have to own up to some of these mistakes, however. So here's Paul Ryan reaching his hand out. He doesn't see Paul Ryan's got a knife in the other hand. Mark Meadows comes to him, and Mark Meadows says, look, Mr. President, we got a plan, and we can take Paul Ryan out right now. While you have the mandate you have, you just drug all of these representatives over the finish line. You just drug all of these senators over the finish line. Everybody's terrified of you right now. They don't understand the base, and there will be wobbly knees on the floor of the House. We can get rid of Paul Ryan right now and put either Jim Jordan or whoever you like as Speaker of the House. He thought about it. He turned it down. So, I mean, if there was a time to wage a war, it was that moment. This man had just won in an electoral college landslide. Nobody but myself and two other people maybe on planet Earth saw coming. I'm talking about pollsters, and he shocked everybody. He shocked so much so that Paul Ryan was forced to swallow his Adam's apple and make ridiculous speeches like this, and you had people in Wisconsin and Michigan, Florida, all over the place that owed their seat to Donald Trump. And that was the moment, if to do anything, he was going to do it. He didn't do it. And now, with the wall specifically, do you remember that monstrous omnibus spending bill that they passed right before the midterm elections? Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy convinced Donald Trump just to sign the omnibus bill, which he did not support and did not want to sign. And that as soon as they came back, because there was going to be all the campaigning, it didn't matter if they lost the House or not. If they did, fine, they would still give him the vote, and that they would fund the wall, and it would be done by the time he was running for re-election. They lied to him. Yeah. He signed the omnibus bill. Paul Ryan took off to Fox News, and some other lucrative deals he had in the mix, and he never got a vote. Yeah. So you got to own up to this stuff.
With the time we have left, where are the Democrats now? Where is Biden now? I mean, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. Build Back Better is it's stalled. No, it's over. It's done.
Yeah, it's over. It's done.
And I don't see what he has left to do with his presidency, at least domestically. I mean, I know that they'll probably try to get stuff through reconciliation, but the air is out of the tire now. It's completely deflated. I mean, what if you were, just asked to be honest and brutally honest, what would you suggest this team do? Because it just seems to me that it's in complete free fall.
I would have suggested they would have pivoted a long time ago and to go back to pretending you're not a radical leftist. Like what on earth were you thinking? Basically the Doug Schoen approach. He's a Democratic pollster, but he's an old school Democratic pollster. He said he is a good guy. 2 months ago, he said, this is over. Any push forward for big government spending bills, radical reforms and changes right now will be met with electoral disaster in 2022 and probably 24. They didn't listen to people like him. I'm not sure they can change this now, Peter, because here's what's going to happen. Despite all the talking head nonsense, the White House is now in a box. He's done. He's a lame duck. After the new year, everyone will get in campaign mode. That's what's going to happen. They're going to need to raise money. They're going to have to fight off primary challenges. There's just going to be too many moving parts to try to pass something so big. Now, he'll go to his pen, or he'll be told to sign whatever they put in front of his face, like the very first executive order he ever signed. He had no idea what it was. They handed it to him. He's like, what's this? Never mind. Sign it. Shut up. We'll tell you later. And he did. They're going to go, the team at the White House will go probably hard at executive orders. They'll try. They'll continue to scapegoat the unvaccinated as why they can't get the economy under control. They really, at this point, have no choice. I will, because we only have a little bit left. They don't seem to be learning their lessons. Yeah. Look at what they did with football. Look at what they did. I mean, all these bowls, Boston canceled their season. Now Army's up creek, right? This is devastating to these athletes. I don't know if you guys heard some of the, the Pirate coach or anything. From any comment over the weekend, but this one, of course, is what's making the news now. A COVID outbreak. They forced these people to get vaccinated, the kids, young men, whatever you want to call them. And yet at the last minute, they tore their dreams away from them anyway. If this is the way the final year leading up to the midterms is going to be, it's going to be a bloodbath. No amount of redistricting is going to help getting clobbered. And honestly, like we've talked about before, some of this is just history, but they already made a mistake. And I don't know if they can pivot now to pretending they're all like Joe Manchin, especially after such a thoughtful, crafted response on why he was opposing Build Back Better. Clearly, the man thought this over. And the reaction to his no vote was all, the no vote was all that mattered to the people who are reacting. So they've already created this aura that, Peter, they're willing to put not just your wallet, but inflation and the economy at risk to make these changes. And people didn't ever support this kind of change. They were the people who did vote for Joe Biden and Democrats in 2020 were doing so hoping to stabilize things. They were convinced like Donald Trump was rocking the boat too much. They did not want Joe Biden to come in and radically transform America. He's not Obama. That's not, that is not the presidential campaign that he ran. They misinterpreted the electorate completely.
They misinterpreted.
I don't know.
Yeah, they misinterpreted it when it was really not even a victory, because at least Obama had a big victory in 2008. So you can say,
huge,
okay, I have a mandate. But Biden never had a mandate. So for them to misinterpret it in this way, hey, let's get all this done now.
Very foolish.
Nuts. And I don't know how they can pivot. I mean, now, they've insulted Manchin. I mean, they're going to have a job just keeping Manchin within the party because, if they keep insulting him like this, you may say, hey, I can just go off, be with the Republicans.
Yeah, but
and rumor is Manchin wants another crack at the governor's mansion in West Virginia. So think about that. Yeah, that's rumor has it. So I've heard this from multiple people now. So, what's his? What would you do if you were Joe Manchin? Blindly follow Joe Biden and the Democrats on a national platform? No way.
Who is going to ask Joe to campaign for them? Who? Anyone?
Oh, no, especially after Virginia. So, and I'm putting these, it's not very particularly flattering. So I'm like, every time I got to put these eye drops in, I take myself off. So I'm not like showing everybody. But yeah, basically after Virginia, we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, both, going in to try to save Terry McAuliffe, who was a prior governor. I mean, think about this, guys. This is a state Joe Biden won by 10 points, allegedly. And then, this is a gubernatorial candidate who had been a prior governor, supposedly left with a not bad approval rating. It was always had that tie to the Clintons people didn't like. But, generally, Virginians didn't think at that time anyway. He had done a horrible job. He was never particularly well liked. I'll give people that. But Joe Biden comes in, Obama comes in, Kamala Harris comes in, and nothing could save this guy. And so that's Virginia. So if you're, Raphael Warnock in Georgia, if you're Rostin in Nevada, if you're anybody in a battleground state, or a battleground district, you want Joe Biden to stay away. Not even battleground, because what Virginia and New Jersey told people is that it's not just about battlegrounds this time. If you're in that 10 to 15 point range, depending on the demographics of the state or district or whatever it may be, you could be in trouble. You can be in deep trouble. So you want Joe Biden nowhere.
Yeah. But Richard, since you bring up Georgia, what will the effect of this new election law be in Georgia? Yeah. How's that going to affect the outcome in 2022?
Amazingly, we pulled Georgia and election reforms multiple times. We had pulled it after the January 5th runoffs and special election. We pulled it before. And Georgia voters wanted a much, much stricter reform bill. And that is true of demographics that you would surprise you, but they didn't get it. They expanded some of the worst possible provisions that we had during COVID. You're not going to, see either Kemp or Raffensperger, try to enforce the law any more efficiently, because they view themselves as benefiting from this now. They think that they're going to basically, they fostered some goodwill with Democratic voters. It's a completely foolish, idea. There was some wins in it for Republicans. Matt Brainerd's organization, Look Ahead America, did get, I wouldn't call it equity, but basically in Georgia, there was a lot of souls to the polls efforts that really occur in urban areas, but don't occur in rural areas. And worst part about it is that where the funding comes from for this, you can't have government agencies get lump sums from people like Mark Zuckerberg and then only use it in Democratic areas. That's completely unconstitutional. So they did get that in there. But this bill, the Georgia bill, this is another criticism I had of Trump. If you want to be relevant, that was the front and center battle. You could have been all over the state of Georgia.
Yep.
He didn't do it. And I don't care what Democrats say, Jim Crow 2.0.com.
They can talk all they want about.
They can talk all they want.
They can talk all they want about voter suppression, but the way Trump and the GOP dealt with Georgia was just a purely self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally. They actually expanded some of the worst possible avenues to vote. There's not going to be, there are roundabout ways to get there are ways to get around bans on ballot harvesting in states that outlaw them, like in states that outlaw them, like supposedly Nevada and Georgia. There are ways to get around them. The drop boxes, I mean, some of the stuff that included will be expanded in 2022. The act of a third party handling a ballot is grossly unpopular. And the idea that different voters are subjected to different verification procedures depending on the method of their vote is also extremely unpopular. The voters of the state wanted all of this to get rectified, and instead they made all that worse. I'm sorry.
Well,
The bill in Georgia is bad.
How did that? Why did that happen? Was it because of Brian Kemp?
Yeah, and the legislature lost their stomach to fight.
Okay.
Yeah,
Venezuela can have an election. They start at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 8 o'clock at night, they know the results. I don't understand. Why is it only the United States that talks about democracy incessantly can't hold an election people can understand?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there is somebody who's been watching these things for decades, you know, observing them, different states, knows the minutia of the difference in each state and how it's conducted. We were never designed to do this. This is by design to exploit. It's just the truth. Yeah. It's just, I hate to say it, but if, you know, in Arizona, you know, you had Cyber Ninja say, well, you can never fully audit this election. If you can't fully audit something, that means there's something wrong with the system. Period.
If you can't fully audit a company, it means it's corrupt.
Exactly.
That's right.
Imagine if a company, the CEO said, "Hey, I'm sorry, you can't audit the company, so you can't go through the board."
That's why they never will audit the Pentagon.
Right. Yeah, or the Fed, right? And you have people in Wisconsin, election officials in Wisconsin going to 2020. You know, it was a flood the zone. And everybody attributes some of these mistakes that we and others have found. Everybody automatically wants to attribute them to a sinister motive. But in fact, I think a lot of these people allowed some stuff to go through that never should have because they were simply overwhelmed. The system was not designed to to conduct an election the way that we did in 2020. You had whole states, Midwestern states, that had never even implemented early voting, let alone mass voting and by mail. And they just expected these states to turn around and, you know, and offer this within 60 days, you know, completely revamp and overhaul how you do things in 60 days. Gentlemen, has the government ever implemented anything in 60 days so radical and so different? They couldn't even get a healthcare exchange up. $1 billion later, and the website didn't work after a year. I mean, so why on earth would you ever expect, this to go? You want to believe that everything went, smooth. It was a well-oiled machine, completely secure. Look, whatever. Pass the bong to the nearest friend. I don't know what to tell you. You're knocked out of your gourd. Right. Government never works that way. Never. Right. We told everybody those change of address flags were low-hanging fruit from Fulton to Wayne to Philly, everywhere. Low-hanging fruit. The system never catches up to those change of address flags. And if you're looking to mass send out ballots, unsolicited in many examples, completely unsolicited, you're going to have people fill them out who should not have filled them out. But the most recent example, by the way, is that canvass in Arizona. 47% of the households were like, this person doesn't live here anymore. Cheers.
Right.
I just wanted to say, I'm not a liberal. I'm a conservative. I'm proud to drink beer. Okay. So because I've never lived in Washington, D.C., never will and never want to. Okay. So.
But that's very, very nice. But Richard, I mean, what happened about that Arizona? Because they did that audit, which went on and on interminably. And then it kind of was, I mean, it turned out to be inconclusive, not because they didn't find a lot of fraud, but they just simply said, oh, well, if you keep counting all these fraudulent ballots, you can say, well, Biden still won. But of course, but the issue was these ballots were fraudulent. So it's like you have counterfeit money. Someone gives you $100, $30 of which is counterfeit, and what do you still have $100? No, obviously you have $70. But
Yeah.
it just seemed like why did the Republicans drop the ball after that audit?
Yeah, I think that they structured the audit incorrectly. And this is what I told people who are doing different work out in Wisconsin, which but so far, I'm never overly confident or hopeful about any of these things because I know how the machine works, but at least they understand the difference. In Arizona, that's a great example of what you just said about, like, if you give somebody $100, this person paid me $100. Can you audit this and tell me whether or not he really gave me $100? If you continue to count the counterfeit bills, then you're going to come out with the same amount or roughly the same amount, which is why you actually add a few more votes for Biden, but not really. The media covered it, what they found incorrectly. The truth is, the only way, when myself and others began to look into some of these states, the only way we found without access, if Cyber Ninja had access we didn't have, which I'll tell you what, if they would have given a firm like myself, like Big Data Poll, or if Look Ahead America and Big Data Poll came together and we used their resources along with ours with the voter files, we would have done, I'm sorry, but it's just true, we would have done a much different job, and we would have done given people a more accurate picture of what happened, because the only way that you can really conclude whether or not the ballot is legitimate is to contact the voter on record. And so when we were contacting people in Michigan, an absentee ballot was filed. It's a change of address flag in the voter file. Why did this person supposedly request a ballot in September or October, whatever it may be, and it landed at such and such address? They resubmitted it, and then it was ultimately counted. The only way to find out what happened there is to contact the voter on the record. It's a lot of labor. It takes a lot of work. It's very tedious. That's why Look at America and myself, we really use samples, subsamples, because you can't do it for all of these ballots, and not with the resources we have. Now, Cyber Ninja could have. They could have outsourced it to somebody else and or done it themselves and hired canvassers. You don't even have to physically do it. You can call them on the phone, which is what we did. We called the record on the phone. Hello, is this Mr. Smith? Is this John Smith? I'm from this agency. We're conducting a canvass of the vote in 2020, and we're trying to make sure the records are correct. Can you tell us whether you still live at this address? Is this your birthday? Did you request the absentee ballot on this date? Did you receive it on or around approximately this date? Did you personally submit the absentee ballot? Did you mail it back? Whatever it may be, that is, you have to interview them to go through a slab of paper. I mean, it was great you found the pink slips didn't add up. That's fantastic. It was great you found that Maricopa County deleted a bunch of logs. That's fantastic. What is at issue here is whether John Smith did this. Did John Smith really hand in that ballot or not? And those people, I mean, they don't want to get in trouble, so they'll tell you the truth. Listen, I live at 123 Apple Tree Road right now. This person hasn't lived at 123 Apple Tree Road in 6 years. I don't know how that record got there. That is the kind of stuff that we were finding, which means somebody knew about these change of address flags, gentlemen. They went and looked for them, and they got those ballots. They put them in drop boxes, or they dropped them back off. And in the case of Michigan, there are certain county clerks that we eventually, without a legal entity trying to help us get these answers, they eventually just realize you're onto them and they shut you down. So they stop picking up the phone, and you have a request. They start helping you. Once you start to they start to realize that, for instance, in our case, it was the people who did have change of address flags, yet the ballot record was still showing that it went to that home. And they were trying to tell us maybe the ballot was mailed to another address. Well, they would have filled out an absentee ballot affidavit if that was true. And there would have been a box where to forward this address to, right? Where do you send my ballot? And by the way, I, Richard Baris, hereby certify that it is me. It's me, legally me, and I am requesting that you send this ballot over here. But the law says you have to hold those affidavits for 2 years. They were gone. Gone. vanished. When we started finding the records, if it wasn't for the fraud examiner that we brought in independently to help, he started realizing they were deleting the records. They were deleting the submission records, dates that the absentee ballots went out, that were returned. That's the kind of stuff that we were finding. The only way to do that, which Cyber Ninja did not do, is to contact the voter. That's it. It's the only way. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources.
So what did Cyber Ninja then do? What did they do all that time? I mean, that went on for months.
They were matching records and stuff to see whether or not this voter had a change of address flag. They found a lot of ghost votes, which are basically people who don't live at right, addresses. But those votes were not removed from the count. So they gave, or some were, but the benefit of the doubt was given to a ton of different ones. There were ballots that had signatures written in uppercase, lots of them, uppercase signatures. Guys, that's textbook BS. That is a textbook. That is what, you try that in Florida, your ballot's going in a provisional and you'll have to argue a case or something with the canvassers, which nobody ever does. So it ends up just getting jumped. It's not a vote. You can't do this stuff, and sadly, we left a lot of loopholes. Indefinitely confined in Wisconsin did not require signature verification. There are a couple thousand at best, indefinitely confined in a given year. Almost 200,000 ballots were declared indefinitely confined. And by the way, COVID-19 was not an excuse to declare yourself indefinitely confined, which it was an entire news circus over, because there was a local county clerk who said on Facebook, I don't care, you can do it here. And people found out, a judge got involved. I mean, the idea that 200,000 people would have ignored that judge. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, come on. Just, whatever. I don't believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. Those procedures are in place because as human beings, sadly, we need laws sometimes to keep us in order. As John Adams said, if all men were angels, we wouldn't need laws. And I try to give people an example. Look at Reality Winner, an employee for the National Security Agency, has a whole life ahead of her, risks jail and her career just to leak a bogus document that makes Donald Trump look bad. She gets caught, but it was more important to her to hurt Donald Trump. You have James Wolfe on the Senate Intelligence Committee. The guy was a staple on that committee through Republican and Democrat administrations, right? Or Congresses. He, risks it all, profession and liberty, just to hurt Donald Trump, by the way, with fake information. Right. So, but it nevertheless was classified. If those people are willing to do that, if you receive 3 or 4 unsolicited absentee ballot requests, and which people send me from all over the country, California, one person got 21 of them to their address. My friend in Florida, he built a home. He's the only one to ever live in it. Yet he got 2 absentee ballots from a father and a son, the senior and junior. If you are being told that Donald Trump is a Nazi, an evil person, you're not any longer the bad person who's breaking the law. In fact, this act of breaking the law is virtuous. And by the way, the media is not really going to chase it down. The FBI is not coming after me. The state's not coming after me. They hate Donald Trump.
Yeah,
I'm going to fill those in.
Klein Smith intentionally misrepresented a FISA warrant, and he got his license back.
That's right. Andy McCabe lied under oath to the inspector general. Yeah. He's reinstated full benefits. Yeah. There's no accountability. They know they're not going to be prosecuted.
He kept the GoFundMe money, I'm sure.
Yeah, he kept
it. And I really do believe that the reason we didn't see, or 2 reasons that we didn't see a lot of that in Florida, because we didn't, even though there were problems. We still didn't see that in mass, like what looked like an organized effort. And in some of those states like Michigan, public sector unions, I don't have any proof, but I strongly suspect they were in on this, because there's no way for this to have happened with that many people turning blind eyes, unless the public union, put the word out. Like, you will not challenge these ballots, just process them and shut your mouth. And I believe they did. I believe that's what happened. But in Florida, 2 things happened. Ron DeSantis fired Brenda Snipes and Linda over at Palm Beach. They were repeat offenders of absentee ballot abuse. And there was a rumor, and I don't think it was a rumor, I think it's real, but people knew about it, that they had started to put in place under Pam Bondi, people that were going to watch, counties like Broward, and they didn't know whether these people were real volunteers or whether they were like basically spies for Pam Bondi, the attorney general. We heard this all over everywhere we went. Like, Pam's task force is going to be watching everybody in Alachua County like a hawk. And then, so instead of taking a risk, there may be consequences, then you just kind of let it play out. Miraculously, Trump and Republicans increased their vote share in all these problem places. Don't you find that a little bit convenient or a little bit coincidental?
But I think it matters where, if let's say the Republicans control the state legislature, but the Democrats control the governor's mansion,
it does matter.
But then basically it's the executive is in the hands of the Democrats, and so they can just simply ride roughshod over the Republican. I mean, that happened in all of this: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all of these battleground states. You had Republican legislatures and Democrat governors, and the Democrat governors were able to basically undercut the legislatures.
In Wisconsin is a great example. Now it's just becoming news now, but we knew about this at the time. Republicans were not given access to the state voter files in real time, almost real-time data. Democrats were given it for free. When Republicans asked, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? They were offered it for a fee. So what does that matter? It matters because Democrats were easily able to go into the records and see who is a change of address flag, who is a dead vote or a suspected deceased. I mean, we have this based on first name, last name, middle initial, birthday, address. And that is how you match each record. So the idea, like PolitiFact, when they tried to fact check myself and others, it was such a fraud. As if we didn't have 5-point matches for these people. What they were trying to claim could possibly happen could indeed not happen. Maybe one clerical error here and there, but it didn't matter anyway because we were contacting these voters on these records. So that is the point they tried to hide from everybody. And that is really what it would take, again, which is why I am more interested when I see somebody say, we're putting a canvas together. The only question is, how well are you training the people who are doing the canvas? Like I saw some really crappy scripts for how to contact some of these households, explain who you are. Some of them were very poorly written and, it's just like training. And Peter, this from your days of, designing questionnaires, the interviewer matters, so how the interviewer is trained matters. How you worded the script matters. You can't, you have to do it right.
The interesting thing is if you do a bad job, I was working at Colgate-Palmolive. If you come up with a crappy questionnaire and crappy results, you get fired. Okay,
that's right.
They got the receipt. They got the receipts. Okay, there's no discussion here. Okay, yeah. And so again, my mantra, you train people to be incompetent. Not incompetent. You train incompetent people. Train people to be incompetent.
Yeah,
that's who we are. All right, gentlemen, I gotta
just go. Before we finish, let me just read out a question, a comment from Jonathan. And Jonathan says, and I think we all agree with this, my big problem with the Republican Party is that they continue pushing this anti-Russia policy, pro-NATO, and supporting the dirty war in Syria. I think we're all in agreement there. It is very, very strange for Republicans to do this because it's a vote loser. You lose an election by promising war, and above all, war with Russia. I mean, that is something nobody wants.
Nobody wants it.
Trump's brilliance was that he kind of made Hillary Clinton, the Democrats, the war party. And he was, this is something unusual for Republicans to be the peace party, or at least in recent history. But now they're allowing Biden to appear as the peace president. I mean, because Biden's going to be having negotiations in January with the Russians, and the Republicans are going to be screaming, oh, Biden's selling out the country, selling out the country. I mean, that's just absolute suicide if the Republicans going down this path.
That's right. And
And,
George
and we've I'll tweet it out. Just the last thing I'll say, Peter, I know you got to go. I'll tweet it out though. We asked the biggest enemy question. We track it probably annually. We're going to do this maybe twice a year. But it's a big loser for Republicans because Republicans see China as a threat. They don't see Russia as a threat. You know who does? Democrats. Independents agree with Republicans. It's politically a loser to listen to people like Lindsey Graham.
Yep, I agree.
A loser.
Yep, that's good.
Oh, I'm really glad we ended this calling Lindsey Graham a loser, because that's a really good way to end it.
Well, it's really,
Which is
again,
true.
Jim, it's another great conversation. Thank you so much, Richard, for giving us the time.
Always.
It was always fascinating, and we learned so much, and it's always so interesting and stimulating. I mean, the time just whizzes by. I can't believe we've been talking for more than 2 hours. Yeah,
It does.
So thank you so much, and we're going to be your guests, I think, in a couple of weeks. So really looking forward to that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.